powerful nation is only concerned with putting down developing countries and lifting itself up. They believe that the U.S. is thirsty for another war in order to boost its arms industry and take Iran's oil. They ask why smaller nations like Iran cannot have nuclear power, but the U.S. can have a whole stockpile. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not about U.S. domination over smaller countries. This is certainly not about boosting the U.S. economy or taking oil. As the greatest world power and the leader of the free world, the U.S. has a kind of parental relationship with developing nations. The U.S. can have nuclear weapons because it has a highly developed government with checks and balances in place to ensure that these weapons are handled properly. The U.S. does not intend to stop countries from developing, it intends to ensure that they develop in the right way. It's not a big bully that goes around taking nuclear power from small countries. If a country proves to be peaceful, it is free to hold nuclear power and invest in it for the betterment of its people. Iran has proven to be very hostile, and the idea that they should not have these weapons is not exclusive to America. No, this idea dates back to 2015 when all the world powers agreed to stop Iran from having this nuclear power. The next topic that we want to discuss is President Trump. We want to make it very clear that we are not Trump supporters by any stretch of the imagination, and much of his rhetoric and Twitter posts are disgusting and do not make him likable in any way. And we are aware that many Americans and most of the world dislike him and actually mock his intelligence. There's a sense of fear around a man like this being the president of the free world. Ladies and gentlemen, we are aware that the president of the United States is expected to be a respected figurehead of our great nation. Trump is not this. However, we must admit that he is no idiot. He is a very smart man, and his reckless Twitter fingers do not represent what is truly going on in the White House. We must also remember that Trump is not the supreme leader of the United States. The idea that he can simply press a button and go to war with Iran is just a silly caricature. This ridiculous idea is a real fear that many people have when it comes to Trump. In short, America is totally justified to have nuclear power and ensure that it does not go into the wrong hands. We strongly urge you all to vote in favor of this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so may I ask the first speaker of the opposition, please? Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am Nicola Reza Marsico, an Italian, French and Persian guy who wants to defend his native country, Iran, from the terrible and crazy accusation promoted by the US. This is the current diplomatic situation between US and Iran. This is the consequence of violence, racism, populism, isolationism, imperialism, all characters resumed in one person, Donald Trump. Iran, also called Persia, with over 81 million inhabitants and with a giant historic heritage, has been destroyed by ignorance and US economic interests. The real question that we have to ask ourselves is why Iran can be considered only a victim of American imperialism and not a provocateur, why we have to consider the Trump decisions as sickening, selfish, violent and inhuman. For starting my argumentation, I would like to quote a fantastic president in his presentation of his program for international relations in 2017. We have to think about our business before trying to change the behavior of others. We have no right to issue judgments. Look at what is happening in our country. What right do we judge others if we kill cold-blooded policemen in our country? The point of view of Trump will be not to intrude on the policies of other countries. Very well, here it seems to be a human and normal person, but perhaps he had not yet discovered the economic interest that he could exploit in the Middle East. As soon as he heard he launched the treaties with the UAE that submitted to him, and when he wanted to start with Iran, our country decided to remain sovereign and not to lose the majority of its export passing through the US. Ladies and gentlemen, Trump has achieved his objective of reducing Iranian exports to zero, and he seeks to reign to isolate Iran. After much research, I discovered the real reason. The real reason is the motto, make America great again. This, ladies and gentlemen, enforces the view that America wants to be a modern-day imperial power at the expense of developing nations like Iran. How we can follow the ideas of a man that continued changing his political position. Trump was a reformist, then a Democrat, and now he's a populist and sovereignist of America in the same way as Le Pen Boris Johnson and Salvini, dangerous people that are destroying the democratic equilibrium. In the past, Iran have decided to not respect the imposition of the international treaty created by the US because it was considered as a victimization of our nation by the big power of USA. Actually, in the Middle East situation, Iran is the only country that didn't submit to the great American power. Iran decided to maintain a production of uranium to be able to defend itself from further international religious threats, such as Iraq in 2004 and UAE in 2006. Currently, in our country, 60% of the uranium is used for combustion and not for distribution of energy, in society. Certainly not to alarm new tensions in our region, as the head of the army confirmed in the government reunion of the June 2017. We don't have any intention to fight with other countries. I want to insist on this point. You have shown an image of Iran that doesn't correspond to the reality. Iranian representatives are not cruel and bloodthirsty monsters. With our words in our hands, we unfortunately have to confirm that the former president Ahmadinejad didn't represent the vision of the republic. All the people were frightened by these authoritarian attitudes, but fortunately, Rouhani can return to the presidency of great honor and democracy. Unfortunately, the American popular ignorance has classified him in the Iranian stereotype of a violent Islamic person, but actually Rouhani was Secretary of the Supranational Security Council of Iran for 16 years. His high position in nuclear negotiations led to the nickname of diplomatic sheikh. In addition, Rouhani and his team were appointed as the best diplomats in the Iranian foreign industry based on their efforts to resolve the nuclear crisis and their ability to build confidence in international theater. Do you know what is peace? Peace is the concept of social friendship and harmony in the absence of hostility and violence. Peace is commonly used to mean freedom from the fear of violence. In the past, leaders such as Kennedy and Obama have used the policy and diplomacy for the establishment of peace. So how will Donald Trump establish peace if he condemns the United Nations and he promotes wars and bombs, destroying international laws and relations? This is certainly not the peace that promotes our religious book, the Quran. This is certainly not the good decision for a better world. Here we are, ladies and gentlemen, in the capital of the culture, of the emancipation, of the progress, Oxford. So everyone knows that the Middle East is victim of the stereotype of violence and terrorism. But this is not Iran. Iran is the new Persia, the empire of Darius, the country with the oldest and biggest historic site, Persepolis, where the majority of the Islamic philosophers were born. Iran is not the image that the media gives to us. The media are totally influenced by the new populism that is appearing in the Occidental countries, such as US of Trump, that give the picture of an archaic country only based on violence. This phenomenon wants to create fear among the people. So, young people from all over the world, mobilize yourselves to reform an efficient ruling class based on culture, philosophy, and history. And moreover, it's our duty to condemn hatred and those presidents with low profiles who prefer to think of money, power, and our personal career. We can't accept a president who was an actor and who seems to continue to doing so, mistreating women and destroying civilizations. I want to conclude reminding who were the populists of history: Benito Mussolini, Adolf Hitler, and Franco. So US, whose tandem a putere Caterina patientia nostra, for how much time you are going to abuse of our patience?
Okay, another very, very good speech. Okay, can we have the final speaker, please, for the proposition?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Brian Hessing, as previously introduced, and I'm in favor of America taking action against Iran, as some people would say. And you can already see a few people in the back, a little toes off here and there. And then a lot of accusation against Trump that I don't really know where any of that proof is. But anyway, I want to jump in right into the topic. So if we flash back to 2015, the JCPOA treaty was signed by a bunch of UN and other countries to limit the amount of enriched uranium that a country was allowed to produce. Iran included on this treaty, who signed it on it. Later that same year, Iran revealed that they had enough uranium to produce 8 to 10 small nuclear bombs. This obviously created a lot of tension between Middle Eastern countries and other nations that were kind of taken aback by this and didn't really know what to expect. Fast forward to 2016, when Donald Trump was elected, and then 2018, November 2018, Donald Trump laid out his plan. He bailed out of the JCPOA treaty and wanted to see what Iran would do. And sure enough, they continue to produce the uranium that they had promised just 3 years earlier to stop producing. He had then put sanctions on Iran that destroyed their economy and left them with almost nothing, yet they continued to produce the uranium. Just this week, earlier this week, Iran had exposed the fact that they had exceeded the limit for uranium by a lot. And now the EU, who was previously in full support of Iran and was against the United States in almost every way, was now deeply concerned. I think that Iran has exposed to the entire world that they can't be trusted with this uranium treaty. And a lot of negotiations that went down about making more treaties and trying to get them to stop producing this uranium. But as shown previously, they can't be trusted alone. They will just continue to build this uranium and enrich it way over the levels that is acceptable. They cannot be stopped by any other country, as Russia and China both are allies with them, and any negotiation through the UN would go nowhere quickly. The US is not a bully and is not trying to enrich their power by just simply bombing Iran. The attack would be fully over the air. There is no boots on the ground, as Trump was quoted saying. There would be no soldiers going to war, no civilians injured. The attack would take place through the air. They would bomb the nuclear facilities and get out. No civilians would be hurt. No land would be destroyed. This is not a war. This is not like Iran. This is Iraq. This is not like Afghanistan. This is a whole new, different war. And Iran has shown that it is not trustworthy. And the only action I could possibly stop them is this action. And the accusations against Trump is not, alone. Trump is not alone in this. He has a lot of educated advisors around him that tell him, well, not what to do, but what he should do. And he doesn't make this decision by himself. He doesn't wake up one morning and say, you know what, I'm just going to bomb Iran. He doesn't do that. He has Harvard educated, Yale, all these people around him that are telling him this is a good idea, this is not a good idea. He's not, yes, some of his Twitter and social media statements and other things are a little iffy, a little over the edge, but he's not a dumb businessman. Just earlier this year, the United States was very close to going to a nuclear warfare with North Korea, and Donald Trump decided to take it upon himself and defuse the whole situation. Iran is dangerous. They are simply dangerous. They have just ignored numerous treaties and different agreements they made to continue building uranium, and they are a serious threat to the Middle East and to everyone. As Saudi Arabia, a U.S. ally, has already expressed their concern to the United States and asked for assistance because they are simply frightened by what Iran could possibly do with this amount of uranium. And although Iran has claimed to they claim they don't have any nuclear bombs, they're not making any weapons, they haven't proved any of that. And this amount of uranium from 2015 to now 2019 is enough to make a very large bomb similar to one of Hiroshima after World War II. And they've shown time and time again that they can't be trusted the way that other countries can. And the United States they're not imperializing, they're not trying to show their power, they're simply looking out for world peace and trying to preserve the peace and avoid another world war that would be catastrophic to the world. Iran, it's continuously disregarding the treaties and going above their head, above everyone's head to continue building this uranium. And we have no idea what they're building or what they're keeping secret over there, and they're proving to be a serious threat and a huge danger to the world. So I really hope that you can see that Iran is not just an innocent country, and they have enough explosives and nuclear warfare to start possibly World War III. So I hope you see that and support our motion.
Okay, so we're down to the last man. Alex, you could deliver your speech, please, for the opposition. Thank you. Right.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Alexander Young. We're addressing the question of whether America should act towards Iran unilaterally in the interest of world peace. Now, as all of you know, Nicola has highlighted issues of politics and ethics, but I'd like to ask all of you right now, did it mean military or economic attacks? It should be noted that at every single act, people will just react to it. Hence, our stand is that the United States should not act unilaterally towards Iran and compromise it in any way. Now, I'm going to focus on the social effects America had on Iraq, the economic sanctions which were imposed on Iran, and claims made by Trump that Iran is supporting terrorism. My focus in social effects, I would like to raise two questions. Why does the Middle East harbor anti-American feelings? Are these feelings towards America justified after the Iraq War of 2003? Sorry. To answer my first question about why the Middle East harbors anti-American feelings, may I direct my respected audience to this scenario. And as you all know, anti-American feelings goes after the Iraq War. But what would you do right now if your country were involved in a war? How would you feel? Other than the obvious answer, which would be to fight back, defend your country, is it not reasonable to be in constant fear of what could and might happen to your family while you're still fighting inside your wars? Wouldn't your livelihood and others be completely destroyed in the aftermath? In fact, would this feeling of hatred resume if these soldiers continue remaining on the land? Now, ladies and gentlemen, what I've described to you objectively as of now is how the Iraqis felt when the American soldiers took over the land in 2003. For more context, over 600,000 people were killed in the Iraq War of 2003, which in turn begs the question, do these numbers justify the collateral damage? Now, collateral damage should be minimized in most wars, but why? Why was this collateral damage so high in this case? Of course, this caused some social effects in America as well. Many Americans believe that entering the war in Iraq was a huge mistake, and as a result, the United States was divided in their sentiments. Now, as all of you know, and as the others mentioned, internationally, this also damaged the reputation of the United States as they broke international law and did so without the United Nations and international community's approval. Ladies and gentlemen, we do not have any intentions of spreading any anti-American feelings tonight, but rather state the facts as the international community sees it. Now, in addressing the economic sanctions imposed on Iran, I would like to raise the following questions to you all. What are the possible motives of America in imposing recent economic sanctions on Iran? Are these sanctions justified as a means of peace? Many wars in this day and age come on the pretext of some other issue, and in the case of Iraq, it was based on oil. For more context, oil prices surged after President Trump seemingly threatened Iran in a tweet three Thursday mornings ago, saying Tehran made a very big mistake by shooting down an unmanned US drone. Trump has certainly been willing to risk market turmoil on some fronts, like for his trade war, but a large-scale war could mean yet more instability and risk for everyone. Now, rising oil prices would cause a rise in prices for many other commodities, as oil is an essential raw material used in production of many materials in our markets. A rise in such an important raw material increases the cost of production, thereby raising the price and increasing the cost of living. Now, from history, it was rising oil and fuel prices that caused recessions for America. fact, I quote, all shocks have killed more US economic expansions over the last 40 years than any other single cause. I'm quoting this from Nicholas Colas, co-founder of DataTrack Research, who wrote a note to his various clients. Also, the Great Recession was caused by an epic housing bubble and over leverage on Wall Street. But the fact that US oil prices skyrocketed above $140 a barrel in summer 2008 contributed to the depth of the downturn. Hence, if similar sanctions to isolate Iran economically as it did before worked, there's no need for a unilateral military war against Iran. In fact, the Iranians really think that the sanctions are an attack on their economy and their business partners. Moreover, to my third point, based on claims made by Trump. Now, ironically, before he was president and claiming that Iran was the leading state sponsor of terrorism, Trump claimed the same for Saudi Arabia by calling the lead funder of terrorism like many other countries. But as all of you know, it's not a business partner of America. Iran. Ladies and gentlemen, was this claim referring to the China of clash terrorists or Iran being a strategic threat to America? Now, some of these terrorist groups include Hamas, which is a resistance group rather than being terrorists. And this is also included to Al-Qaeda, through various weapons and training. But through evidence that has been surfaced, it shows a rather varied and antagonistic relation. Because jihads were detained and they had to go through several negotiations to make sure that they and their family could go free. Now, in saying so, ladies and gentlemen, which groups count as terrorists? Anyone? Okay. What may be a terrorist to you may be a freedom fighter to another. Iran in particular has a capital punishment against terrorism. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, one thing is certain, it is more than evident from a party standpoint that war is not viable for both parties. Given the timeline of reported show-offs of powers and threats, war, should it happen, should be a result of aggression and one to maintain peace in the region. Conflict resolution is the key to world peace. Therefore, I plead with you all, support the opposition team. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Both teams, I thought, were very concise, very much to the point. The arguments were very cogent. Again, it's a very tricky area. Let's just congratulate both teams, please. Really very super exposition of rhetorical skill. Well done. Right, we're going to move on swiftly to the rebuttal session, which will give both sides an opportunity to question their speeches, okay, and the content of their speeches. So if you pay very careful attention to this particular part of the debate, that will help you form an opinion about which team you think has been the most persuasive tonight, okay? So we'll start with the proposition team first. We're going to get you to maybe come up to the front, or if you want to, I suppose come up to the front. Yes, well, I think we'll take one question at a time, okay? And again, you can specify if there is an individual you wish to pick on, you can. Otherwise, it could be a general question for the team, right? Okay. Sorry. No, it's a 20-minute session, but it will end on. So, which team does it? Okay, thank you very much. Right.
We have lectures.
Okay.
Right. Well, first of all, I've heard a lot of ad hominem arguments against Trump in my opposition's arguments, and I just want to say that Trump is not the supreme leader of the United States, as I said, and the idea that he can simply press a button and go to war with Iran is just a silly caricature, and this ridiculous idea is a real fear that many people have when it comes to Trump. Just last month, a U.S. drone was shot down and Trump urged for war against Iran, and in the silly cartoon view of the U.S. government that so many people have, Trump could just give the order and start World War III. But this is a real world, and Trump spoke to his highly educated advisors and decided against immediate war with Iran. These advisors urged him to be careful with innocent Iranian lives. And instead, we believe that war with Iran will be fought without boots on the ground, which President Trump has already promised. So I would just like to ask pretty much why you think that so many ad hominem arguments against a single person justifies your arguments, because what we're really talking about is a whole government.
Okay, thank you very much. And is that addressed to anyone in particular, or no? Okay, so just to clarify, why has the opposition chosen ad hominem attacks on Trump? Is that necessary in this particular debate? Who would like to answer that?
Yes,
Yes, okay.
We can go on.
Well, it's up to you. No, we'll take one at a time.
Okay.
Okay?
So, actually, you have to know that Trump doesn't want a war with Iran. Doesn't want. So, the problem, I invite you to watch the video of the communique press of the chief of the army, the US army, that wants a war with Iran. So, we are condemning Trump for his political position and for his, for his characters of populism, isolationism, America first, and those sentences of violence in general for world peace. Because actually we are speaking about world peace. But guys, what is world peace? You want to get peace with bombs and with wars? This is not peace. Peace is all. Peace is like the symbol of Gandhi, Mandela, those persons, not Hiroshima, for example. I want to say, because thousands of persons are dying in this war for peace. I don't think that this is peace, because actually Iran doesn't want a war. Rouhani doesn't want a war, the president. Then Trump doesn't want a war. So why we can't speak in a diplomat table as we did in the past with Obama, with Kennedy, the big past, or with Obama, Kennedy, for example, or Rouhani, the president, Trump, the chief of the army maybe also, and maybe with France, Russia, and China for speaking of how to organize this world for the people and not for economic interest. This is the big problem. We are actually some diplomats tonight, so we have to work for the people and not for the numbers, not for finance, not for economy, and not for oil, because this is the real problem of Middle East, the economic interest. We have to work on that, and actually we are condemning the position of the chief of the army and the Trump character.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think that's the reply from the opposition. Now, if the opposition have any questions they wish to ask, okay, the proposition team, they may do so now.
Where?
So, you need to come up.
So, Iran promotes violence and terrorism, so why in the wars of the Middle East, Middle East, US continues to leave armaments for Saudi Arabia and the UAE for destroying countries such as Yemen in 2015? What are the justifications for selling armaments for wars if you want to promote peace?
Okay, so from what I understand, the question is, thank you, why is the USA in the business of selling arms if it really wants peace? Okay, so whoever. Great. Ricardo, thank you.
So the question is pretty much why
Yes.
We are in the business of selling arms, but I would argue that this argument, this debate, has nothing to do with America wanting to increase its economy and sell arms. This is really about world peace, and it does sound crazy that engaging Iran would be a positive thing for world peace. But really, if you don't do anything and you try to be diplomatic and negotiate with the UN and with Iran, Russia and China would not allow that discussion to get anywhere. Your argument that Russia and China are working more for the people than the United States are, I think, is ridiculous.
Can we just stick to the specific question,
Okay.
which was
Yes.
why arms are being
Okay.
sold?
Well, this is the real world, and there are guns and there are bombs, and that's just a fact, and it has become a part of our economy. But I do not believe that America is going to engage in this war simply to have more arms dealing going on. They are engaging in this war truly because it is the better option to promote world peace.
Hey. Okay, we might have one more final round, I think, of questions. So if the proposition have a question, they may ask it now. Thank you.
So just a couple minutes ago, I had heard Alex say, or Nikolai, I forget which one, but they said that Iran is not posing any threats and it's not being deemed as any danger, or there's nothing wrong with having these uranium if everyone, like other countries have it. But just in recent news, Iran has basically revealed that they're going to start enriching it more and higher, and making it more dangerous and more powerful. And recent and more, like a little while ago, they had threatened Israel to just annihilate it. And it's not a very simple country at this point in time, and it's not a victim. It's not just sitting around and getting hammered by all these new ideas and new threats from other countries. So my question is, how is it justifiable that Iran can threaten other countries but not be threatened by other countries?
So what I understand is, how is it possible for Iran to be in a position of threatening other countries such as Israel without facing any consequences? That's a good question.
Actually, I wanted to ask, I think, just to formulate the question, because I understood, because it was a big part of the introduction,
yes.
the introduction, and on the production of uranium, actually. But we have to maybe speak of a very important thing, actually. We almost born equal in rights and powers, actually. So there is a value of equality between the states that has to be maintained in our war. But I can't understand why US has to impose, has to come in the Middle East for speaking about our own problems, because we can also speak with Israel directly, with UAE, maybe also with a diplomatic institution, as we have the European Union, for example, in Europe, in the political part. We can build, if we leave us alone, a real maybe institution for the organization of our states of the Middle East. And actually, always for answering this question, I understand. So you want to impose to Iran to not produce any uranium, but actually you can go to the site of the United Nations, and we can see that in 2013 the US will be produce 52% more compared to 52% more uranium compared to Iran.
Right, can I just stop then?
Yeah.
The question was, if Israel is threatening, I think Israel has threatened
Yes, if you-
Israel
Yeah.
directly, if a country like Iran has, I think that's the question, has threatened other nations, should it not face immediate consequences? Is that the question?
Actually, I want to do also a point of information because the problems with Israel and Iraq were born actually 1,000 years ago, but were considering be maybe dangerous with the government of Ahmadinejad, who was the craziest president of our nation actually, Iran. But nowadays with our new president, we have to check also the program of the chief of the army. There are no words where Iran wants to intervene against Israel, actually. And also because Iran doesn't want a war, doesn't want to treat, doesn't have those consequences of war, because it's a spectator of Afghanistan and Iraq. And we also had a lot of refugees in our nations. So we know what are the consequences of war, and also what are the consequences attacking Israel. And attacking Israel will be also attack US actually, because we know that there is a second Cold War in the Middle East with US, Israel, and UAE, and Iran, Russia, and China. So,
Thank you. Okay, I don't want to waste too much more time, so this will be the last chance, I think, for the opposition to ask questions, okay? After that, we're going to have questions from the audience. Thank you.
Alright. So, what's the problem if Iran sells all to China, Russia, and India? Why is the US distrusting us just having business relationships with other countries? Is it because you want to try and remain in power, remain the alpha of attack?
Okay, so what I understand from that question is, Iran is in the business of selling oil to Russia and China and India perhaps. What's wrong with Iran wishing to do that? What's the difficulty there? Why is the American government, is that right? Sort of, in a sense, opposed to Iran's oil exports?
The topic of this debate is not oil. The U.S. is not worried about Iran's oil shipment to Russia or China. This is not a matter of the U.S. attacking this. It's a matter of Iran disrespecting, disregarding all the treaties they've signed in the past and threatening countries around them, U.S. allies.
There's a point of information. Will you take it?
Actually, the US has imposed some. All right.
Iran's oil shipment has nothing to do with this attack. It's not. The U.S. isn't worried about Iran's trading and exporting of oil to other countries. It's more about Iran just disregarding everything that they've signed off on and threatening U.S. allies and countries around them. And if nothing is done, then Iran's going to keep producing uranium and eventually have enough power to emerge as a superpower country. This is not about oil. This is about the danger of Iran.
Okay. Right, speaking of the clock, I think there's probably just a chance for one more question in the rebuttals. And I believe, Nicola, you have one more question, yes? So this will be the final question then in the rebuttal session, okay?
There's a question about the answer of the question, actually. So, you said that actually US is not interested about the economy of Iran or about also the production of oil, exportations, importation, those things. But actually, this is the cause of the situation, because why you are not interested in Iranian economics if you have imposed the sanctions in our economy to importation to zero? Because I want to repeat that Iran doesn't want a war. Iran, if you listen to the speech of the president, wants to project a new economic growth. And it's impossible with those sanctions. So why you're not interested if you are imposing some economic sanctions in or independent world?
Okay, so the question is, if you're not interested in Iranian oil or in Iranian economy, why have you imposed economic sanctions?
Okay, so I would say that the problem with the oil and the economic sanctions around it, that problem is not the cause of this this development. The real problem is Iran's nuclear stockpile, and in response to that, the United States has become interested in Iran's oil. They have introduced those limits and blocked them from trading that oil, but that is all a tactic to try and put pressure on the leaders of Iran to stop their production of uranium. And I would say that you're trying to argue that these sanctions that are being imposed are the real problem, when the sanctions are a reaction from the United States to Iran's nuclear stockpile and just putting pressure on Iran. It's a tactic that is used to put pressure on Iran to change what they're doing, and Iran has not responded to it. They have continued to stockpile uranium.
Thank you very much indeed. Again, I'd like to thank both teams for a very good presentation. It's not easy to discuss these issues in a very short space of time. The amount of research that both teams have done has been absolutely brilliant, stunning. It's not an easy topic, even for graduate students in the university, to be able to talk about these subjects, who are studying politics, for example. So I must just say, from my own experience of debates, this has been one of the best debates, one of the most fascinating, because it is a very tricky area. You have to be very good with the facts, and also in relation to questions that I put to you, I thought both teams were very, very good. Okay, so well done to both of you. What I want to do now is to open the floor to members of the audience. It is obviously a very topical, I can see many hands going up. So we're going to have maybe about 20 minutes of we're going to have about 20 minutes of questioning. Okay. So again, we have a couple of tutors here. So some of the tutors, I'm going to extend it to tutors as well. Don't be shy of asking questions. Yes, tutors as well. Right, where are we going to go? Gentleman right at the back, will you stand up in here? Right. And again, you can choose who you wish, which team you wish to direct the question to.
Yeah, this question is to be directed to those proposing the motion.
Right.
I'm Gavin, I'm talking to you now as an international human rights lawyer.
Ah.
I hold the world peace very important to my life and human rights, and it's undoubted. I have met many cases of human rights abuse in Iran. But very important to me is the United Nations. Now, the United States is a permanent member of the Security Council. So is China and Russia. And they have as much right as the US to oppose anything that the US puts forward and veto any decisions. But if the US decides to act unilaterally, what message does that send out to all other members of the United Nations? That the US can, if the rest do not agree, act in breach of their agreement under the United Nations treaties. Particularly when one of the reasons why you say that you wish to act is that Iran has breached its obligations under nuclear treaties and disarmament. Would it not lead to the potential of unravelling the United Nations?
Okay, so you're ignoring the United Nations. I've heard a couple of good reasons why, but what message are you sending the world? Who wants to answer that? Okay.
So I think that the U.S., if we go through the United Nations as we've done before, it will take very long. The Iran will just continue to enrich this uranium that they're creating and producing, and Russia and China obviously being powers, will oppose, and any chance of stopping Iran will be shut down immediately by the UN. I think that if the United States goes over the UN and decides to attack unilaterally, it shows a progressive act to prevent a world war that could possibly happen if Iran continues to produce these enriched uranium and continues to disregard treaties and agreements they've previously signed and promised. And I think it doesn't really send a negative message. It sends a message that we're actually going to try to keep world peace, and that something like World War II is very obviously terrible for the entire world, all the countries. And I think that if Iran continues to enrich the uranium and threaten other countries as it is, there's no point in just letting them be, as eventually they will emerge as a superpower and have nuclear weapons and all this power that they were not meant to have. So.
Yes. Okay, Ricardo.
I just need to add something.
You just need to add, Ricardo, wishes to add something. Okay, go ahead.
Well, I would just, I would like to add that, emphasize the point that the idea of not allowing Iran to hold these nuclear powers is not exclusive to America, and multiple countries, the UN came to an agreement to not allow Iran to have these nuclear powers. And it seems that this question, I guess, makes it seem like America is just America against everybody in this discussion, when really back in 2015, everybody held an agreement to not allow Iran to have these nuclear
Right, so it's not just America, it's a number of other countries that have joined in and more or less agree with that position, the American position. Yes, gentleman over here.
So my question is about chap in the white shirt on proposition.
Brian, yes.
I really enjoyed the Trump talk and the alliteration and the euphemisms, but I just want to find out exactly what you meant by this new age world war and how we're going to be bombing these places with no, as you said, no casualties. It's an all new kind of warfare. There's going to be no civilians injured. So are you going to call up these nuclear power plants? Which, by the way, you're not presuming they're making weapons. You don't actually know because Iran's saying they're using power plants. So there could be power plants. There could be nuclear weapon stations. You don't know what's going in. You just know it's a building involving uranium, and you're going to bomb them. How are you going to bomb them and have no civilian casualties? People working there not count civilians. They're going to call them up and say, evacuate the area, guys. We're going to bomb you. Or and if any of the uranium was to get out, the radioactive. If you ever see Chernobyl, it's on HBO. Fantastic, you should watch it. The after effects, Chernobyl could have affected all of Eastern Europe for 100,000 years. So saying there's not going to be any casualties, I'm not really convinced, mate.
Okay. Okay. So on the collateral damage question, how can you guarantee there are not going to be any casualties? Can you come up with
That's true.
Well, thank you for that question. It won't be the targeted airstrike on the power plant that is producing this uranium will obviously it's not going to kill and destroy the entire country of Iran. It will be targeted just for that uranium to destroy the uranium that they have promised to not build and not enrich and that they shouldn't have. And I mean, any threats or damage like this isn't going to come with no casualties. I was mostly speaking about civilians and innocent civilians and not the workers on the uranium. So obviously anything like this isn't going to come with no consequences, but I think that the consequences if this action is not taken would be more severe than if it is.
Okay. Okay, come on, let's get a bit more excitement here. Yes, over here.
So I have another question for the proposition side.
What's this busy night tonight? Yeah.
It is.
Okay, right.
So So, with the UK this week calling Iran's actions contrary to all international law, that's from The Independent, an article today, by the way.
Sorry, who said that? United
The
Kingdom?
Independent.
Oh, the Independent newspaper.
It was a quote from the United Kingdom government.
From the UK government?
UK government in The Independent, just sourcing.
Okay.
After they themselves had ships attacked this week, and with Iran's powerful connections in China and Russia, isn't it a bit too easy to draw parallels to the lead-ups to certain horrible conflicts in the past, like World War I?
Right. Okay, so the attack, from what I understand, is the tanker
Right, yeah.
situation. Is that right?
Yeah.
That was the UK government, though, wasn't it? It wasn't the. It's not the Americans who.
Right, I was merely saying that with multiple countries getting involved on both sides,
Right.
isn't it a bit of clouded waters now?
Right. So is that act of taking an American tanker not further going to complicate matters, in your opinion, in the opinion of the proposition team? Charles?
Okay, well, when it comes to the Iranian tanker that was taken by the British government, of course we all know that Britain has a strong alliance with the United States, and they were doing United States work in that case because Iran was using this tanker, and it was in violation of the sanctions that America has placed on Iran. So the UK has taken the ship, and in response to the question that the buildup of this war is similar to World War II, well, I would argue that all these countries having nuclear powers and allowing Iran to increase and eventually build warheads would be more dangerous 10, 15 years down the line if Iran has nuclear power, then it could become nuclear World War III. And I think that would be much worse.
Okay, thank you. Okay, more questions? Yes, just move it.
I have a question for the opposition.
Opposition team?
Opposition.
They haven't had many questions so far. Anyway, yes, we've got one question for the opposition team.
So it's been stated several times that Iran has gone over what they promised with their limit with the amount of uranium they're making. First question is, I wanted to know why they did go over and why they need so much more uranium than most other countries have. And second of all, for all the uranium is going, because it can't all be going towards power plants and making power. Obviously, other countries are using it for power, but not just that. So I wanted to know why they need so much extra uranium.
Okay, very good question. Why have they gone beyond the limit? The limit that was set in the agreement. Why has Iran reached the limit? Does it need all the extra uranium?
Well, thank you for the question. The actual uranium can be used for a deterrent, only for a deterrent, in any case. And you did say something about Iran breaking the terms, right? Okay, so then didn't Trump also break the agreement with Iran that limited the amount that they can know?
Oh, sorry, is that question to?
Yes,
that a
I
question?
Yes, answer the question. Sorry. So what I think what you said is, they do need more uranium. I think what you're saying, but as a deterrent, is that right?
Yeah, it's a deterrent. Nothing else, just a deterrent.
I want to say, why would you need a deterrent if it makes you see more of a threat? So isn't it doing the opposite of what you want? Wouldn't you want less uranium to see less of a threat, less of a target, and kind of a way which would then give you
like what they said, it's a real world, and you know, we just need. It's mostly just only for deterrent. It's mostly just for deterrent. We're not merely trying. In fact, it's not in our intentions to actually be a threat. We're trying to be peaceful, yet people just bring us into wars for, you know, our oil.
Okay, thank you very much. You want to add something very quickly, please,
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, as he said, we have to just in 50 seconds understand the situation of Iran in the Middle East. Because actually, Iran is the only country that remains Shiite in this situation where all the Sunnis are like, all the Middle East, all the countries of the Middle East are Sunnis. So there is a big conflict, a religious conflict based on Sunni and Shiites. So it's a division of the Muslim religion. And actually, US is like actually sending a lot of armaments, weapons to those countries. And Iran remains alone in this situation. Iran doesn't want to attack or to defend himself, but he wants to, it's like a psychological war. He wants to say, I have this power, so don't attack me in a possible war, future war. As the same as in India, actually, and Pakistan. So why US not attacking India or Pakistan? They created atomic bomb, actually, in secret. So this is the situation. It's a psychological wall between the violence and the respect of this civilization.
Okay, thank you. Very much. Right, we're running out of time. We're going to wrap up before you have a question.
I was to respond to your question actually. The questions, it's not about worrying about why they have this much uranium. It's to do with the fear of America. If you look back at many fascist regimes, the foundations for those regimes were based on fear. You know, it's throwing up, they've got this going on, they're going to do this to us. And they say, okay, oh my God, the situation getting out of control, so let's just nuke them. We saw what happened with Iraq. I'm not speaking America, Iraq. And I think we can all agree that Iraq was a massive failure. So rather than throwing all hell to the wind and saying what's going on and worrying about it and being fearful, I think having discussions and not being so fearful and not saying we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and having a much less abrasive attitude towards Iran will have much more fruitful futures.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Thank you.
This is a question for proposition. This was something that wasn't talked about much during the debate, but how do you defend the fact that unilaterally declaring war on Iran would be socio-economically devastating for both the US and Iran?
Would an attack, a unilateral attack, be destabilizing both for the USA as well as Iran?
When you say attack on Iran, and as gentleman brought up the attack on Iraq, this attack on Iran isn't going to be a full-on war. It's not going to be boots on the ground, soldiers, armies fighting for months upon months, like Iraq was. Obviously, that didn't end well for America. But this attack on Iran would take less than an hour, and well, not, I mean, but it's not going to be years of warfare between soldiers and armies. It'll be one attack that will end the power plant and destroy the Ukraine.
Great. Thank you. Question for the opposition, yes.
So I'm pretty shocked that the tenure question came to the proposition because, so if anybody doesn't know, Iranian ships just attacked and would have succeeded in an attack on a British tanker, had a Royal Navy ship not saved this British tanker. It violated international law, and that is twice Iran violates international law. So I don't know why America may seem like a bully here, but that's international law, like twice, and people are talking about UK and how America and UK are somehow enemies. when international law is defended by the UK and therefore.
Right, can I just get a point of clarification there? So are you claiming that the Iranians have already violated
They
or
already violated international law twice. Yes.
when are those two occasions?
The uranium treaty.
That's the uranium treaty, yes?
And then as well as the international treaty that they just impeded a.
Right, but that's not anything to do with the tanker.
It's got world peace.
So you were making a link between the tanker and...
I'm making a link that Nikolai keeps saying that world peace is, or Iran is interested in peace when that they impeded a British.
Right, okay. I don't think there's a link between those two, but I think what the question is, in relation to the tanker, is the taking of the tanker a legitimate move to make, even if Iran is not following international...
It doesn't matter if it's a legitimate move, it's violating international law, so that's going against the UK.
Okay, so the question is, since Iran is going against the UK and UK's wishes in relation to their enrichment program, is it not legitimate then for the UK government to take a tanker? To seize the tanker?
No, I'm not saying UK, United Nations. United Nations. So
Well, it's not the United Nations, UK government that's taken the tanker.
but it's they're breaking international law.
Who is breaking international law?
And was your question
Right,
about the
so what I understand is, given that Iran has broken international...
twice, why is it that America is seen as a bad guy when defending
No, I don't think
international
that's, we have to clarify the point. The point is the taking of the tanker. What you're saying is, given that Iran has broken its agreement, or is in breach of its agreement, what I believe you're saying is, it's okay for the UK government, or it's alright for the UK government
Not
to...
UN.
Oh, the UN. It's not the UN that's taken the seized the
Actually, I
tanker.
understood the question.
I'm saying,
Just 1 minute, please. Just 1
It was
second.
clear, actually. The question was...
Nikolai keeps saying that Iran wants peace,
Right.
and international, they go against international law twice.
Okay.
And that was contrary to international law, and it's also made peace seen as
I understand the question.
Yeah, you want to go in front? Okay.
Just,
Okay, so further clarification.
No, I understand the question actually. But the fact is, we have to understand that why we are criticizing the US. The problem is the fact that another answer will be the incurrence of US, because actually US is attacking Iran, but I want to give a point. The Global Terrorism Index of 2017 has placed the United Arab Emirates, UAE, so US has some relations with the UAE, in the 12th position placed on the list of the 30 countries that are promoting terrorism. Iran at the 20th place. So the fact is that actually there are some countries in the Middle East that are submitted to US power. Iran wants to maintain his sovereignty, his independence of this situation actually. So if a country continues to attack the economic of a state as Iran with the sanctions, for example, it's obvious that Iran has to respond in a certain way. And I think that I would prefer this violation of those treaties that actually send a drone in our territory just for watching, just for spying and for also limiting our privacy. So I prefer these actions of Iran than the US one actually. So the violation of treaties are not like bad consequences in the world peace and also for the people, whereas the US let me say the US actually are like solding some weapons to the nations of the Middle East and destroying countries as Yemen in 2015. So we cannot do a comparison.
Thank you very much. Right, okay, we were running out of time. Perhaps time for just 2 more questions. Yes, gentlemen over here, yes.
So anti-war with Iran has said that Iran builds extra nuclear warheads to defend themselves, and they are justified because they feel that they should put their country first, while simultaneously labeling Trump as a nationalist. Is this not the same for America? What's wrong with Trump being nationalist and his America first, okay? rhetoric when the same logic is used to defend Iran. Anti-war with Iran has stated Iran builds nuclear weapons to build peace. Is Iran really building nuclear warheads to defend themselves? Are they really not a country of anti-Semitic terrorists? Because if so, why approve the anti-Semitic terrorist stereotype by threatening to bomb Israel, an innocent country, 30 minutes after the United States attacks? Why shoot down a US drone for no reason at all? If Iran has broken their treaty, why should the United States be expected to uphold theirs? There seems to be a real double standard here. Iran building missiles to seem stronger in order to ward the enemy off is like a cat raising its fur to look more intimidating to a tiger. It's like a bee pretending to be a hornet to ward off the bear. America is far too strong to be beaten by Iran if it fights back. Iran is building nuclear missiles to fight
I get the picture. I get the question, can you make it very brief, the question, just one sentence, please?
Iran,
Just
opposition,
one line.
opposition.
Who is it to?
Same question.
It's to the opposition team.
Anti-war with Iran has said that Trump is a nationalist while simultaneously justifying Iran's building nuclear missiles.
Yes. In other
Because
words,
they're
can you
nationalists.
answer that question? In other words, you accuse Trump of being a nationalist, but building weapons secretly, if Iran is doing that, and enriching uranium, is also in Iran's national interest. So in a sense, is it not also behaving in the same way, Iran? It's also behaving in the same way. Anti-Semitic also is threatened Israel.
Hang on a second, that's not anti-Semitism. That is not anti-Semitism. Threatening Israel, threatening a country.
We'll come on to that in a minute.
That's just out of interest there. I'm not letting those guys be tarnished with anti-Semitism.
We will come on to that question. Maybe you
That's
want to ask that next question. Make it very brief, please, because we are running out of time.
Quickly, the definition of nationalism is like actually to impose the values, the culture of a nation into a world context. So actually, we know that actually, yes, Iran is a nationalist nation, too. But it seems to not actually do some accusations or to actually, Iran doesn't want to attack any other nations and doesn't want to impose some walls or some other things. So how we can compare the, actually Iran is a patriotic nation, which is different to nationalism, and Trump is a nationalist, because actually America first can understand he's a nationalist, as the same on Make America Great Again. It's really different to the politic of the president of Iran, Rouhani, has a totally different politic. Actually, the politic of diplomacy, of discussion, of collaborations, of cooperate, and not a nationalist politics. So it's quite really right.
But Trump,
Okay, right, yes, Colin, yes.
Right, so yeah, that question was targeted at the idea of Iran being nationalist, and kind of, my question kind of similar to that for you guys. But it's more about the hypocrisy of America standing up for world peace, whilst turning a blind eye to the agitators that are its friends. And that's my concern to you, is it okay that you create world peace at the detriment of world destruction, like Israel, for example? It's breaking a lot of treaties, a lot more than Iran is, but it's getting money from America, a lot of money from America. So is it okay that you do that, that threatens world peace? And all the time Iran was targeted as saying that it was actually targeting Israel. But didn't Netanyahu stand up and agitate Iran for the last decade with a big picture of Iran, with a bomb, or I would say Iran, and then get support? So is it not hypocritical for the United States of America to say, we're going to bring about world peace with a stick? Is it hypocritical?
Yeah. Okay, so I hope we've understood that. So is it not hypocritical for the United States to go after Iran when Israel is in violation of many treaties, international UN resolutions, hasn't resolved those, and that Israel has also been seen to be threatening Iran? So why is there no contradiction then there in its aim to secure world peace?
Okay, so again, this is another question about hypocrisy, and there have been plenty of those where there's multiple examples of Iran being hypocritical and saying that well, the opposition says that Iran is a just peaceful nation and they want to have this nuclear power in order to, just like many other countries that have nuclear power, use it as for the betterment of the nation and also as a deterrent against attack.
On the specific question about, are you not ignoring, is not the US government ignoring Israel? Israel's violations.
Well, I would agree that Israel has violated multiple terms, but Israel is a strong ally with the United States, and I would say that although Israel has broken these terms, just like any alliance that the United States has with the UK, these allies work within the interests of each other, and I would argue that the problem is Iran, and the problem is this nationalist nation, which after 9/11, many of its citizens cheered in the streets, saying that they were so happy that this terrible thing happened, and I think that should be the first priority.
You have to be very, very brief, please, with your question.
Not even a question.
No comments. You have to make it very brief. Give a chance to somebody else who hasn't asked. Yes.
So a question for the proposition.
If you
side.
stand up and shout a little bit, shout for the who? The proposition.
Proposition.
Right. Okay.
You guys stated that the war in Iran would be very minimal. None of that boots on the ground, as you quoted the president. Yet that was the policy in Vietnam and Iraq, both wars which the U.S. took part in, initially with that policy, and both wars in which the U.S. had to retreat and they lost because they got too involved. So how do you think that this time around is going to be any different if you use that same policy for a country in a comparatively similar situation? How do you think it's going to be different from the other two times where you've lost?
Okay, so very good question. So boots on the ground was first put off the table, then it was put on the table later. So,
Well, first of all, I believe that the United States could, of course, learn from these mistakes and not repeat those mistakes. That's what learning history is all about. And I also believe that this is a very different situation because we're not talking about an invasion, and we're not talking about a war of armies. Again, I want to stress the fact that I'm talking about a war of Air Force and Navy, and that it would be an attempt to remove nuclear power and do it as swiftly and quickly as possible.
okay. Right, we are running out of time. We'll finish just before 9 o'clock. Yes, okay.
Okay. So, do you honestly think that there will be no repercussions for attack? Oh yeah, it's for them, by the way.
Oh, sorry, for the proposition team.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, do you honestly think there will be no repercussions for attacking Iran? You've repeated on various occasions that Russia and China are indeed allies with them. Can you honestly say that they will not retaliate in any way? Perhaps the US will take precautions against civilian death, but what if the Chinese and Russians don't? Also, the motion clearly states that if Iran provokes the US. But right now you're just functioning on the assumption that they're using the uranium for missiles or whatever, developing warheads, but you don't actually have any proof of this. So if they don't do anything and they don't provoke you, then what's the point?
Okay, so your question is twofold. Yes, one is in relation to we don't know what Iran is doing. Secondly, is the American government aware of any repercussions which might occur from Iran's backers, perhaps China and perhaps Russia? What are the consequences? Have you thought about the consequences of your actions?
So I think referring to the question that we don't know what Iran is doing with this uranium. As Nicola has said before, that they haven't revealed anything and they haven't said anything, but they claim it's for defense and so that they could defend against other attacks. But they've threatened other countries and they have provoked other countries and shown signs that they are a violent country in general. And to answer your other question of Russia and China, there's no way we can tell what the repercussions of our actions would be with them, with Russia and China, but the consequences of that would be worse than of if we just attack Iran.
Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, any more final? You love one more? Maybe we can just squeeze one final. Yes, go to the back, please. Yes. Stand up, Michelle. Can't hear you.
What evidence does the U.S. have that the war will end in 1 hour?
I didn't get that. Maybe someone.
What evidence does the US have the war will end in 1 hour?
Oh. Okay, what evidence does the US have?
No, one
And how can the country be trusted to not hurt any of the innocent civilians when the Hiroshima that you mentioned yourself and the 2 cases that were mentioned, they have injured many of the innocent civilians?
Hardly, yes.
And how can they make sure they won't injure any innocent civilians when you have Fukushima and other tourisms like Iraq?
Right, so how can they guarantee it will only be less than an hour? And also, how can they guarantee that there will be no collateral damage? This will be the final question then for tonight.
You just
Well, I think my partner, when saying that the war will only last 1 hour, well, this has been a long speech. It's only 4 people for a 2-hour debate, and of course, we don't have a week to prepare this. So, honestly, that was just a minor slip up, but we do still believe that the war would be swift and that the attacks would be done with the overall goal to not invade Iran and the goal to simply take away their nuclear stockpile and do it with the least number of casualties possible and in the least number of time possible. And that is, of course, taking into account multiple assumptions that Iran is using this uranium to build warheads. But we believe that due to the hostility that Iran has shown towards other nations, not saying that the Iranian people are a bunch of terrorists, and we believe that many of them are definitely beautiful people, that it's definitely a beautiful country, and that's why our goal would be not to invade and destroy, as Nicholas said, some of the ancient and beautiful cities, but it would be to end this threat of nuclear power with a country that we simply don't believe should hold such power.
Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of our session tonight. Thank you very much, members of the audience, for coming along tonight. We are going to, the last part is we are going to vote. There's actually another vote that we're going to make. We're going to first vote on which team we thought was the most convincing, okay, and the most persuasive in its arguments. The second vote is going to be on the best speaker of the night. Right, so we're going to think about one individual who we think in his consistency, perhaps in his charisma, was the best speaker of the night? Okay, one individual. We're not going to do that now. We're going to ask members of both teams to leave through those doors over there. If you could do that now.